It won't matter to me because I won't be showing your visage, but it'll matter to you because you want it for the...
There's a flock of starlings outside now. There was a huge flock of probably 300 or more of them a few weeks ago here, landing right outside the window. They were so loud when they take off because they all instantly take off at the same time. And pretty neat. I've never been that close to a murmuration of starlings.
Now, do I need to turn yours on for you, or is it already on?
I might be able to get it from here.
Okay.
The power is on, and I'll see if this. Yeah, I think the battery in this remote is dead, so I can get
Okay, now
it.
you've got a real broad, I've got the whole couch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't adjustable, so
Okay.
so it's good where it is.
Okay, now, when you're up this close, you're cutting off the top of your head. So you
Okay.
either have to stay back.
It'd probably be good to go out a little wider then, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everything's recording.
Okay. Let me click this guy on there. There she goes. Okay.
Hi Nathan, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
For the information for the audience, would you give some information on your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I operate a business called Reverence Permaculture. I'm a permaculture designer, and I help people design sustainability and synergy into their homes and homesteads. I also help run conservation corps crews of middle and high school kids, taking them out into their their first outdoor experience, their first job, environmental stewardship. We try to teach them kind of the spectrum of what it can mean to be an outdoor professional and an outdoor steward, and also help them to kind of connect to nature in as direct a way as possible. I used to do, and still do when I can get it, field biology work. I was a backcountry national park ranger for several years, and I've spent all of my life in Washington State and extreme Northern California, mostly living kind of deeper in the woods, or in at least rurally, if not more in the mountains. And I also teach nature connection and survival skills. I teach a lot of permaculture workshops. I do disaster preparedness classes, and I try to be the spark that gets people to think about where the rubber meets the road, as far as interacting with the land and their families, and getting the actual work done, and not kind of the peripheral stuff. Yeah.
So this sounds like a passion as well as a vocation. Can you talk a little bit about your passion for the work?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a passion. I would just call it my reality, I suppose. I'm gonna start. I had a great grandmother, or my grandmother Dorothy, who passed away a few years ago, and at her wake, a lot of people spoke about how tough she was. She got polio when my dad was 2, and was triplegic after that for over 60 years. And in those 60 years, she was a 911 operator and a ham radio operator, and really active in her church, and just going and doing and running businesses, and all the while dealing with these health issues that, her bones got so fragile that if she accidentally bumped something, it'd be a broken foot or something like that. And she could still feel the pain, she just couldn't move the muscles. She never, ever, ever complained. It just didn't, I don't know that it ever occurred to her to complain. It wasn't that she was so tough, it's just that it never occurred to her to be weak, I guess. I'm not really capable of going to work and doing something that isn't really important to me. I have a limited amount of time in the world, and I don't want to spend any of it doing anything other than what I think is awesome or very, very important. So I guess you could call that passion. I just think of it as a no-brainer. I think if we were all doing that, then we wouldn't be having a lot of the problems that we do in the world.
So you not only work with children, but all the way through all different kinds of ages, it sounds like. And it sounds like you're a very aware person of people. With working with children, you're getting to them at a young enough age that you can give them thoughts about nature, the environment. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's the hope. And I do actually work with seniors quite a bit. The permaculture workshops, by the time you're wealthy enough to own land, you're pretty much an old person anymore these days. So my permaculture workshops, I actually teach elders quite a bit as well. But with kids, I first came to the San Juan Islands when I was 10 years old, and I went to a summer camp over on Orcas Island at Moran State Park. And it was everything a summer camp should be. We were out in the woods, we were doing archery, we were rappelling off of rocks. We had a survival night where we had to forage all of our own food. It was totally awesome, and it was not so hidebound in regulation and over concern for safety, and that the baby was thrown out with the bathwater. And in working with kids, it was an authentic experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And people, we have a tendency to interact with each other through default roles that are put on us through our culture, how we were brought up and everything. And so you go to a person, a cashier, your boss, your wife, whatever, and you are you through this narrowly defined lens, which filters out probably most of who you actually are. And kids have an inbuilt BS meter that recognizes that instantly. And if you kind of try to teach them through a robotic role, through a curriculum, through that instead of through your authentic self, they're not gonna be there with you. Particularly if they're not already interested in what you have to teach. If it's something, if it's something that they're into and they're looking for it, then maybe that's where things work out a little bit. But when I teach kids, I like to find out what they want to learn. And if they don't want to learn what I think is absolutely necessary in a particular thing, then I might display why that's necessary in a way that they get excited about it. And until that point, they're not in a place to learn. So it's a little bit more empathetic way to teach, I guess. There's a Coyote kind of school of teaching that I think is referred to often, and it's how human beings taught each other prior to an industrialized school system that was quite pointedly made for creating factory workers. And I quite pointedly pointedly am trying to not create factory workers. I want people who have a deep connection with the world and each other and reality, and that's the only way to get there.
So what is the difference between these two approaches?
Well, one is particularly curriculum-based, and it's going to have predetermined what these students need to learn and impose that upon them, and doesn't really allow for any trust in them thinking they should know what they want to learn or whatever their interest is. We're all born with these enthusiasms and interests, and enthusiasm, entheos. It's like a God-given inspiration towards a certain thing, whatever God means to you. But those are like our orders from on high to look at those things, and a curriculum doesn't really allow for that, and it doesn't, that I'm aware of, really speak to what does the student want to learn, as opposed to somebody far away deciding, hey, this is it. So a Coyote School of Teaching or what I just tend to do is the flip of that. It's the curriculum is based on the student and the environment in which you're in, and flexibility is inherent in that. So you find something, if we're out on a nature walk and a woodpecker flies by and somebody's really taken by it, then that's what we're going to learn about at that moment. Teachable moments is kind of a term that comes up. You're open to the environment. You're open to what the students are interested in, and as a teacher, that's what my job is, to pay closest attention to. And it's the same goes with if I'm teaching a workshop on fruit tree pruning, for example. I'm going to have people come from all over the island with their own fruit trees out in their own yard, and I can give the rote explanation of, this is how, if you're a commercial orchardist, this is how you're going to tell your 20 foreign workers whose language you don't speak how to prune 1,000 acres of orchard. And those, unfortunately, in today's culture, are considered the experts. And in reality, that context is completely inappropriate for every homestead on the island. And so instead of me like bang, 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 I do make sure to, with a lot of detail, explain why I think certain things are a certain way. But I'm really most concerned with, well, what is your exact apple tree having issues with, and how can we deal with it? Maybe initially going into it, I know last year starting working for the Conservation Corps here, where I was going to be out with a dozen crew members, which were middle and high school kids, to go into it thinking like, I don't have this toolbox of knowledge and curriculum to which I'm going to be drawing from all the time. And it feels maybe a little bit insecure going into it until you, almost the first instant you do it, and realize there's an unlimited amount of material to draw from the crew, from the environment, and from my own inspiration. That's another thing, is if I'm not teaching what I'm not lit up about, then I'm not going to do a good job, period. Yeah.
So it sounds like you care about their hearts as well as their minds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What connection do you have with the environment? And what of that do you want to pass on to others?
I don't have any more connection to the environment than any other human on Earth. We all derive all of our sustenance from the real world. And I'm kind of leaning away from calling it the natural world because we're all a part of nature. Everything comes from it. The real world, as opposed to what we tend to call the real world, going back to after we go camping or something like that. The real world is what we tend to think of as nature now. Things all happen for a reason. I think the modern American goes into nature if they're not really experienced, they're drawn to it, and they just see a place that they don't understand, and they call it chaos, or a place that they fear, and they call it danger. And the reality is that nature doesn't work like that. It's not survival of the fittest exclusively. That's like such a narrow slice of the pie. It's survival of the best fit. If you want to go out and be a part of the ecology, then you have to find your niche and fill it. And that's how life happens most easily for you. It's not through competition and struggle. It's through living your most natural self. And that's kind of, one thing that maybe humans don't have such a direct line access to that, say, a bumblebee or a beaver or a maple tree has. We have this abstract brain that kind of overlays access to our instinct. We can override our instincts. If you're a beaver, you're gonna come out into the world knowing what to do, how to be a beaver. And I'm kind of reminded of this Eckhart Tolle quote that he's explaining what the word sin meant when it was used in the Bible originally. And sin wasn't meant to do something wrong. It was to not get it, to miss the target, as in an archer missing his target. So I thought that was really kind of profound in how humans come into the world. We don't get it right off the bat. Our initial instinct, or lack thereof, tends to be wrong unless we're mindful. And so going into nature and realizing that not a single thing happens without a reason, that there's no egos involved in what those reasons are, and that if you go into it with some humility and try to understand those reasons, and that your own ego and your own reasons being imposed onto them isn't necessarily going to work, then I think you're going to have a more complete and deep understanding of nature. And I say that with a pretty, a years-long background of doing field biology, of needing to track animals and observe them for hours and stay up all hours. And had I gone to college and been taught that, I would have been such a better field ecologist, field biologist, because I would have come at the natural world, the real world, from a better angle, a more real angle of understanding my own role in it as well. We human beings are probably the loudest creature on the planet Earth when it comes to just walking through the woods or a field or whatever. We wear these loud clothes that brush up against just the act of walking is louder for a human being than it is a buffalo or an elephant. We're not even conscious of these sounds that we're constantly making, let alone talking with each other and being excited, just whatever. Animals don't live that way in nature. They're more contained, I suppose. And even the bark of a dog is something that's been bred into them from us. I used to have a pet wolf, and she did not bark. She had a howl that she used on very specific occasions, but it's just not how nature works. Unless you're a bird, you're trying to get laid. That's when you bring out your lungs. But so I tend to there's a way of thinking about that, which is your sphere of influence. When you go into nature, you or the city or anywhere, you have a particular sphere of influence. Your presence, the sounds you make, the odors you emit, the whatever, has an effect on the environment around you. And that environment is going to, in effect, react to you, to your body. the birds are going to fly away, they're going to be quiet, they're going to do something. There's also your sphere of observation, which is how much of the environment you are taking into your own self. Are you paying attention to that bird you just heard, or the person who's talking to you? Are you noticing that plane on the far off horizon, or the anthill at your feet? How broad and dense that sphere of observation is going to affect also your ability to take in the world. So the idea is to take that sphere of influence and shrink it down as much as possible, so all of nature isn't trying to run away from you, and bring your sphere of observation out and bring in as much as possible. And it's a useful learning tool, I feel like, for going out into the environment and getting the most out of it.
Two thoughts come. One of them is in that shrinking down the sphere and being more observational. It seems like play might be an aspect of that, especially in the not being in fear part. Is there anything about those concepts or concepts?
Play is how probably most mammals, at least, have learned to be adults. Invariably, if you study a young animal that's playing, it's doing something that it's going to need to know how to do to hunt or evade or play out some role in its adult life. And invariably, it's got a lot of exercise involved in it, body mechanics, and often connection to your other kind. So making an environment, well, I don't want to say making an environment fun, but having a fun learning environment is definitely important to learning. I think playing music as well for the human brain is vitally important. And I'm not a musician, unfortunately. I've been a little bit of one in the past, but I don't think that humanity understands the role that music has played in our lives. It's been a part of every culture there ever has been, and most of those songs had to do with, this is how you gathered acorns, this is how you processed the acorns, this is how you leached the acorns. These are all different songs that if you grew up in a village in Northern California 300 years ago, every single person you're ever going to know in your entire life knows every one of those songs. Every song you're ever going to know in your entire life, every person you're ever going to know knows every one of those songs. That's such a deep, profound connection that I don't think we have a clue about as modern people. And that is a form of play. That's when work was probably fun in a lot of ways, when you got together with your 3 girlfriends or whatever it was, and you processed acorns for the afternoon. You did this very mundane task, and you sang through it the whole way and made music with your tools. That's what work, I think, is supposed to be for a human body. And back in those days, it seems like the world over, people only worked a few hours a day, and then they met all their needs. That's not the case with people anymore. Unless you're working full time, you're a deadbeat, and or you're at least not able to pay your rent and feed your family, or live up with the Joneses. So that's a real shame. I wasn't born to spend my day doing what other people think I should do, and I don't think anybody was. So that's kind of the opposite of play, and it used to be the same as play. I feel like getting things done, and that's how it is for the rest of the natural world.